LinkedIn is pretty great at a lot of things, like helping you tap into the latest trends and insights in your field. We cannot stop your coworker from tapping her pencil. LinkedIn can help you find new jobs that align with your career goals. We cannot help you find the source of that weird smell in the office fridge. Ew. And while we can't stop your coworkers from bringing their hobbies into the office, LinkedIn can help you bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Quick pause. We expanded to YouTube because we keep hearing, I needed this 20 years ago. And the next generation shouldn't have to wait. So tell the young women in your world who are scrolling and watching to subscribe to This Is Woman's Work on YouTube. I am Nicole Khalil, and you're listening to the This Is Woman's Work podcast, where together we're redefining what it means, what it looks and feels like to be doing woman's work in the world today. From boardrooms to studios, kitchens to coding dens, we explore the multifaceted experiences of today's woman, confirming that the new definition of woman's work is whatever feels true and real and right for you. You are the decider. And that part, you being the decider, is both incredibly empowering and wildly challenging when you think about the sheer volume of decisions that we're making. We're making big ones, like about our careers, relationships, or creating life. Smaller ones, like what color to paint the wall, what to get your dog for their birthday, and whether it's acceptable to eat a block of cheese for dinner. It is, by the way. We are deciding what matters and what doesn't, what to say yes to and what to walk away from, what to do next, or whether or not it's time to stop doing the thing that you're doing right now. And that's where it can get tricky, because knowing when it's time to pivot is hard. What feels obvious from the outside looking in or crystal clear with the benefit of hindsight can be a total mindfuck when you're in it. We've been raised on don't quit, push through, never give up, and we celebrate grit like it's a moral virtue. And yes, resilience does matter, effort matters, but so does discernment. And sometimes the bravest, smartest move isn't doubling down. It's walking away from something that's draining you, shrinking you, or simply isn't meant for you. And the problem is, when you're in it, it's incredibly hard to tell the difference between staying the course and staying stuck. That line between commitment and self-betrayal can get real blurry real fast. And let's address the other extreme too. Pivoting can become its own form of avoidance. Change for the sake of change, motion without meaning. So how do we find that sweet spot where we're not quitting too soon, but also not staying too long? That's what we're unpacking today. And our guest is Melissa Gonzalez, a leader in experiential design and retail strategy. She's a principal at MG2 and a shareholder at Colliers Engineering and Design. And she began her career on Wall Street before pivoting into entrepreneurship and founding the Lioness Group. She's the author of The Purpose Pivot: How Dynamic Leaders Put Vulnerability and Intuition into Action, where she explores intuition, burnout, energy, and what it really looks like to pivot with purpose instead of panic. Melissa, welcome to the show. And I'm thinking that the best place to start is with the most obvious and probably most important question, which is, how do we know when it's time to pivot?
Oof. I think, honestly, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I think your body tells you, and I think this leans into the power of intuition, but really being open to those messages that your intuition's telling you. So for me, the pivots I've made, it's always been bit of just mental awareness, but also these feelings of either uneasiness, you feel unsettled, you feel a little jittery. There's just something in your body telling you like, this might not be it. and you feel this natural gravitation to other things that maybe are the first bridge just for some exploration so that you could then gut check to see, is this a moment in time? Is this something that really is a hobby? Is this something that's a bigger change I need to make?
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. Intuition that our body knows, like kind of reading the signs, for lack of a better term, but
Hmm.
the internal signs, our energy in our body. And also, I think what we consciously pay attention to is sometimes an unconscious telling of
Hmm.
something. Having said that, I will say I find it really difficult sometimes to distinguish between fear and excitement,
Hmm.
or something being uncomfortable because it's new versus uncomfortable because it's not meant for me. Can you give us some examples or some tips about how to distinguish it when it feels really important and also really messy?
Sure. Yeah. I ask myself those questions too, right? Am I hesitating because of discomfort? Is it, and so I think you can also do that investigation on your own to just ask some of those basic questions like, why am I having this feeling? And is this something I've seen before? Because there is a difference, right? I also write in the book about PTSD, which is a very real thing, also. So sometimes things trigger you to be like, I can't do that again because you're making this association with something might not have happened in the past. And it doesn't mean it's always the accurate association that you should be making. So I think the first thing is really just having the openness to allow those feelings, to recognize them, and then do a healthy level of challenging the why am I feeling those things. And within that, you can learn a lot, I think. Has this been seen before? Have I done that? Is it the unknown? What about the unknown is something? Does this serve me? And I think the more you understand your purpose, which is how I landed on the title, it becomes the guiding light for a lot of those answers.
Hmm.
The more clarity you have on what drives you, your overall that why, Simon Sinek's talked about that forever. But when you understand like why you do your job, not just that you do it, not just the title of it, but what about it excites you, what about it energizes you, all of those things, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in your professional life, the clearer you are about those things, then the easier it is for you to answer the question like, why am I having hesitation? Maybe you're having hesitation because it's not serving that purpose. And so you're starting to have that rejection of, okay, this is busyness, not impact, or this is desire, not obligation, or this is just the wrong thing. But it's that clarity that I think helps you cut through the noise and help have more clarity as you're going through that decision journey.
Okay, so you used the word earlier, exploration. And as you were talking through all of that, that word kept popping up for me. I think sometimes we think of a pivot as a moment, or we focus on the final decision, as opposed to, as you're inviting us to do, to think of it as an exploration, a process, a purposeful decision making process type
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah,
And so what I'm hearing is there are a lot of steps that can be taken before the pivot.
sure. Yeah.
Many of them internal, as you talked about. Are there any external steps that we should consider, like conversations to be had, opinions to be leveraged?
Sure.
Because again, I go back to, I always use the expression in coaching, it's hard to read the label from inside the bottle.
Mhm.
And that's often how it feels when we're in this decision pivot stage, right? Where it's like we're in it and sometimes it's hard to see clearly. So external resources can be helpful, but then not pivoting too far and putting your decision in somebody else's hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of aspects to that. One, community, and two, the dance between growth and shedding as you're evolving along the way. And I do talk about it as a process because I do think that if you put this hard line moment in time, like sometimes it is time to make that big switch, right? Like sometimes you've built it up long enough, like we said, no, we're not going to use foul language. So S or get off the pot kind of statement, right? Like sometimes it's time to leap. Sometimes it is, right? But just like a diet, for example, right? I want to be healthier. I want to lose weight, whatever. We don't just like flip a switch tomorrow. I no longer eat anything unhealthy and I'm going to have a perfect body. Like it doesn't happen overnight, although we wish it would. And this
Mhm.
is, no different in many ways. It is a process. Life is an evolution. Our The variables that impact that evolve. Where you're at in your life stage evolves. So maybe if you look at it as a 1-year time horizon versus a 5-year time horizon, for example, then you could really understand how it's a process. To your point of, if you make it a singular journey, it could be really challenging to get there, right? And so in the book, pivot could be 25 degrees, it could be 180 degrees. At the end of the day, it's a pivot in mindset above all, and kind of understanding like what you're making space for, what you're prioritizing, what you're challenging, what you're letting go of. And community is a really important aspect of that because it is going to sometimes need that partnership from others, that support from others to be able to continue on that path, right? Because you're going to have self doubt. You're going to have normal things that come up because change isn't easy. Change could be scary. Change naturally has friction to it. And not everybody's going to serve the same role in that. And some people are not going to be good in supporting your change. So it's also stepping back and saying, okay, like, what does my community look like? There's different groups of people. Who's my 911 circle? Who are my cheerleaders? Who are my healthy challengers? And this way, also know when to go with them. Like sometimes you just need your hype person. I just have certain friends I call up and I'm like, I just need that pep talk right now. And then I get off the phone with them. I'm like, yes, I could do anything, And there's other times where I'm like, what are my blind spots? And maybe I'm going to talk to somebody different. So recognizing that, I think not every friendship or relationship is going to have the same dynamic. And then the second thing is you are going to have to evolve along the way. So you're probably going to have to shed some things in order to make space for other things. And that's a healthy thing too. It doesn't mean that those things in your life up until that stage shouldn't serve a great purpose. It doesn't mean you can't honor those things. It doesn't mean you're being a mean person. It just you're in a different place. And maybe those, whether it's objects that you have in your life that allow you to make space, obligations, friendships, whatever, beliefs, there's a whole, varying degree of what you could shed, and the space that it opens up for you. But having an open minded to that and knowing it's not a loss, it's helping to make new space is part of the process.
Yeah. I want to hone in on that. I love that you said that. I think it's so important. When we think about pivoting, I think we often have the tendency to try to make the thing we're pivoting away from bad, as if it would make it easier to pivot, as opposed to something doesn't need to be bad or wrong or unhealthy or toxic in order to pivot. It could just be the thing that got you here, but it won't get you there, whatever that
Right.
next thing is. It could be something you're incredibly grateful for that particular stage, but it isn't the best thing for the next stage. I mean, we talk about shedding. I think a lot of times we try to make the thing we're shedding wrong or bad. And what I'm hearing from you is that doesn't need to be the case, that we can be grateful for or happy about whatever it is that we are shedding.
Yeah, it's like because you're in different life stages. Some of it is unhealthy things you have to let go for sure. But to your point, it's not always that. It's just when you're in college, you have certain needs. When you become a young adult, you have certain needs. When you're single and partying, you have different needs than a new parent, right? And so you're just going to have to shift in priorities. Shedding might mean I have to shed going out to the club 3 nights a week, like, 'cause it's just not where I'm at, But I had a really good
Right.
time doing that, and sometimes it's other things, but I think it's healthier to focus on, um I had a great time with those things. If they were unhealthy, then that's a different reason you're letting it go. But the decisions you're making are helping you not just be where you are today, but help you get to where you want to go, which is probably a really exciting place. If you can
Yeah.
have it with the right lens, I think it doesn't feel as bad to be able to do that. Because I think sometimes it comes with levels of guilt or other things that inhibit our ability to
Mhm.
shed or let go.
So, with some of the more complicated things like relationships or careers, as an example, I think one of the things that often comes up is we've put so much time and energy into it. And so the idea of pivoting feels really risky or scary. And also because in most cases, it's not 100% good or 100% bad. Like we'll have good days or bad days, or good times or bad times, or good seasons and bad seasons. What do we pay attention to, or how do we delineate? I mean, it's probably not mathematical, but if it's 60% bad and 40% good, or if it's 70% draining our energy and 30% fueling our energy. Like, how are there any, I don't know, guidelines or suggestions of how we can go through the exploration and evaluation phase a little more effectively?
Yeah, I think active listening is a good thing. Journaling's an effective way to kind of take stock. There's going to be things you feel in the moment and other things that are patterns. And if it gets to the stage of a pattern, then it's probably at a more significant scale that you should really address that change, right? Because sometimes it's a one-off. There are certain variables, but other things are either bigger issues or just bigger things to take stock of. So that's number one. I think it's the listening, and having that ability to assess. And then, I think there's a lot of best practices we have with others that we fail to have with ourselves. That's why I wrote a whole chapter about like giving yourself grace, because we could be our toughest critic with the self-talk. We could be the most negative to ourselves versus others. We could judge so easily. And so take a little bit of from the playbook of what you would do for a friend or a loved one and others, and take that approach to yourself. And that's why too, like, less judgment. Know that you not if you have a thought in the moment, and if you check back a week later, a month later, and there's some consistency in that, then that's probably something you should pay attention to and start to think like, okay, what could I do a little bit differently there? And then also recognizing like change takes time.
Hmm.
That's habits are hard to break, right? They always say that. And so some of the things that you might need to change are habitual. So it's going to be an effort, and celebrate the progress you make in getting there too, I think is a really important part of it, because it can easily feel like, well, I'm not being successful at this. But maybe you were successful 25% of the way already and you're not even recognizing that. And so it feels like this humongous hurdle to make change instead of celebrating that micro milestone. What did I learn from that milestone? Like, what feels different? What space did that open up for me? The more you recognize those things too, I think the more it gives you motivation to continue on that journey of evolution.
Starting a business sure does sound empowering until you're staring at your laptop thinking, what if this doesn't work? What if nobody ever buys? What if I just made a very public, totally mortifying mistake? I've built my business from the ground up, and here's what I know. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's building in the face of it. And that is a lot easier to do when you have the right infrastructure behind you. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from brands just getting started to household names. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that actually matches your brand. It's packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. And you can create email and social media campaigns to find your customers without needing to hire a full marketing department. It's time to turn all of those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/TIWW. Go to shopify.com/TIWW. Again, that's shopify.com/TIWW.
TaxAct knows every small business owner has different tax filing needs. With TaxAct, you can file yourself with the help of an expert, or TaxAct can do it all for you. You're the boss, the head honcho, the top banana. And TaxAct is like your loyal, trusty tax aide, ready to pounce on any tax needs you might have. TaxAct is dying to pounce on some small business tax needs. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
I love the perspective of thinking about it from the lens of someone else. I do that often. Like, what would I want my daughter to do in this situation? Because I tend to be hardest on myself, and I tend to want the best for her.
Mhm.
And so thinking like, if somebody I love, admire, or respect were in this situation, what would I tell them to do? I think that can offer some really good perspective, and I love that lens. Now, whether we pivot or whether we stay, there are potential costs associated with any decision that we make.
Sure.
How do we evaluate some of those potential costs, whether it's to pivot or to stay where we are, without letting fear run the show?
hmm So objectivity, right? And I think there's different lenses. So if you were to create a goal sheet for yourself or some sort of grid, there's a number of things that you could say, like if I had a pie of happiness, like what makes up that pie? Because they're all going to have different answers. For some people, it's money. Some people, it's their growing and learning. Some people, it's their title. Different answers for different people without judging, right? Like some people are really driven by certain things over others. So I think the first part is really you need to know what makes you happy. And then you can start to say, okay, well, are the choices I'm making fueling that? Is it stealing from that? Where am I feeling energized? Where am I feeling depleted? You could start journaling that as well. There's a worksheet in the back of the book. It is called the delegation sheet, but the first part of that exercise is noticing that in your week and in your month. Like write down all the things that energized you. Where did you get that dopamine fix? Where did you feel like really energetic at the end of that day? And then what were the things that depleted you, where you just felt like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this again. Everything about it just makes your body feel either stressed or unmotivated and all those things, and start to write those things down. See what the patterns are of those things. Some of those things are going to be out of your control and not. Like some of the things are going to be things that you could change and not be able to change. So I think if you're in different stages of your career, those things are also going to vary, right? Of like what you could delegate or what you can simplify. If you're a manager, you could delegate more. If you don't yet have teams, then your execution of that might be just more around simplification. What can you simplify? What can you start to say no to? Things like that. And so I think at the heart of it, just like, anything, you have to know, what do you consider success?
Mhm.
And if you can understand those things, then that helps too with you being able to say, okay, well, it's not feeding that pie. So might I do something different? Might I make like space for that?
So as you were talking, I was reminded a coach many, many years ago had me do like an energy audit, and I had to track everything that I did like on my calendar for a few weeks, and if it gave me energy, if it drained my energy, or if it was neutral. And it was really fascinating to see
Mm,
how much of my time I was investing in things that drained my energy. And it actually helped create some clarity of what did make me happy and what I did want to be doing. So that happiness
mm,
pie that you talked about, and I haven't thought about that in a really long time. It probably would be worth revisiting. Now, I know I do this. I have to imagine I'm not the only one, but sometimes something will be clear to me. I'll be really clear about what is giving me energy, or that it is time to pivot, or that I do want to stay. But the thing that pops up for me that's not on my happiness pie, but it still pops up, is what will other people think?
mhm.
Any
Yes.
tips for navigating, letting go of, setting aside this worry about other people's thoughts and opinions about our choices?
For sure. It's so hard, especially in this world that we live in of social media. And, between FOMO, which is fueled by constant comparison, right? With just human nature of we care, right? We care. It's a natural thing to care what others think of us. But I think there's a few filters to that. One, first of all, not everybody external to us should hold the same weight, right? So for sure, a stranger should not hold the
Yeah.
same weight as like, your best friend or a family member, right? So like right there, I feel like you can make some differentiation. But the other is the person that theoretically is judging you, because sometimes we just assume they are, and we don't even, right? Maybe they would be
Yes.
cheering us on. We don't even know. We're just living that
Or more
catastrophic.
likely, they don't care and they're not paying attention, right?
Right,
Like, we
right.
are so worried that people will notice, or that we'll be embarrassed or whatever. And the reality is everybody's focused on their own shit most of the time.
Right, and if it's good enough friend, you probably could have the real conversation anyway with them, and if they're the
Yeah.
right friend, they'll be supportive or help you see things you don't see, but so that's number 1, and the second is whether they're close to you or a stranger, I mean, are they also a model of what you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're not, then why does their judgment even matter too? Right?
Right.
So I think, and that's why too, it's important who you surround yourself with when you want that support, whether it's to see your blind spots or cheer on all those things, is also who's been successful on the path that you want to be on, because they're going to bring probably a more relevant perspective to helping you on your journey than somebody who's kind of arbitrarily out there theoretically making judgment.
Kind of a similar question, but maybe just a little bit of a different lens is what would you say to somebody who, in choosing to pivot, they're worried that they're letting people down or hurting somebody's feelings? So, for example, if you pivot away from a relationship or away from a career, I think a lot of us worry about the people we're quote unquote leaving behind and that we're hurting them in some way or disappointing them in some way. Any tips there?
Yeah, I mean, I think on average, first of all, it's like the most normal thing. And you're going to walk away from relationships for different reasons. If it's a relationship where there's not a fair give and take, you're walking away from a taker who that's one reason, right? Like you're
Yeah.
just, this is holding you back from where you need to go. And it might be unintentional that they act that way, but that is the result of the dynamic. And it's the healthiest thing you can do to walk away from it, but doesn't mean you can't be kind about it. I think regardless of the dynamic, there could be a conversation. And at the end of the day, when you can articulate to the other person, you care about them, you'll always be rooting them on. Sometimes you have a varying degree of impact that you could have to set them on a healthy path before you pull back. So you can walk away kind of feeling good about that. And I bring that up because if you're at a job that you're leaving, who have you been managing? Have you positioned them for success?
Mhm.
Can you walk away knowing I've been a great mentor and coach to them? I set them up for that promotion. Like they're going to have their growth trajectory. You can feel good about that. But you can still evolve to where you need to go. So I think it's just having empathy towards it, doing the right thing in that. And sometimes that means difficult conversations, but I think that they help you break away or evolve in a way that you can feel good about in the long run.
Yeah. What about the person who maybe pivots too much or too
Mm.
often or becomes addicted to the pivot?
Yeah.
Any advice for I think we often think about it from the lens of when to pivot,
Mhm.
but any advice for the other
Sure.
side of the pivoting for the sake of pivoting person?
Yeah, well, because then you're asking yourself, am I pivoting or am I running?
There you
And
go.
those aren't the same thing. And I think I've, over my lifetime, from decade to decade, have a different perspective of that. I think in my 20s, it was much easier, right, to do it. I didn't have the same obligations. I didn't have a husband. I didn't have a daughter. I didn't have a house. I didn't, a lot of things. So it's easier to do that in your career. But I think as I've gotten older, I step back and be like, okay, I'm doing this at the sacrifice of what? And I'm weighing it out. Like sometimes it's like, are you playing the long game? And I think when you're always evolving, that's the question. It's great to be a fast learner. A lot of the startups, right? It's like fail fast. And if you've seen things, I've been here before, this is why it won't work and all this other stuff. Sometimes that's the right thing. Other times you're just running and you're not playing the long game.
Mhm.
So I think it's really gut checking that before you make any rash decisions.
Okay, my last question is maybe a two-parter, but what signals do you think we trust the most? We often hear like trust our gut, trust our intuition. How? Of all of the different signs and signals, are there any that you think we should be paying the most attention to?
Yeah. I think if you get the jitters, you should check in on that. So that's one. I mean, it's your body's reacting to something. And so it's either seen it before, heard it before, whatever. So I think that's one. And I think the more in tune you just are with yourself, it becomes a little bit intuitive to be able to know what to listen to. I've seen this before. I've done that before. This dynamics happened before. Not in a way that you are allowing yourself to be trapped by elements of PTSD, for example, right? But more just life experience. And I think the more life you live, the more you can kind of connect those dots of how do you have a healthier response to some of the signals that you're getting.
Right. Okay. My last question is sort of for somebody who's listening and they're thinking about pivoting, or there is this gut instinct that there is a pivot in the future. Any recommendations of where to start? Like, what do we do to begin this exploration phase?
Yeah, I think definitely ask yourself, take stock of how you're feeling, do the energy check-in. I think that's important. And then I think as you think through your pivot, there is an exploration, especially from a professional standpoint. Some of it might be, I need to make space for new hobbies. And some of it's like, I really want this to be my job. And those are not the same thing either. So that's why it is good, I think, to let it be a little bit of a process. Like, give yourself a time period, 3 months, 6 months, whatever you think makes sense. And create some milestones and make sure you're checking in at those key milestones. Like, I've tested out X amount of things. How do I feel about that? Is this a hobby? Is this a job? Is this a big change? Is the mindset shift? And what I want to get out of life, or what my purpose is, can be achieved where I am, but my viewpoint or how I'm spending my time within where I am is going to satisfy that? Or is it a bigger change? Because I think a lot of the times people think pivot means like, everything has to just, I need to cut the cord on everything and I have to change everything. And that's big. That's a big step to take. And sometimes that is the answer. But I do think oftentimes it's not the answer too. So give yourself a timeline, create milestones, check in with them. Go back to, what are the things that energize me? Is that tied to my purpose? Because I do think that allows you to make a healthier filter through your evaluation process.
Yeah. And I'll add one more thing. Get the book, The Purpose Pivot, right? I'm assuming that could be a really helpful tool for any one of us, and it'll help guide us through all the things that you just said, Melissa, and also this internal and external exploration that we get to go through. So the book, again, is called The Purpose Pivot. You can also find more about Melissa and all of her work on her website, melissagonzalez.com, and we'll put all the other ways to find and follow Melissa in show notes. Melissa, thank you for this conversation, for helping us navigate through this really hard when you're in it question of like, how do I know when it's time to pivot? So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, friend, if there's one thing we hope you walk away with, it's this. Pivoting isn't failure, and staying isn't virtue. Neither is inherently brave or weak or right or wrong. The work is discernment, listening to your energy, paying attention to what is expanding you versus what's costing you, and trusting that your intuition doesn't need to scream to be valid. Sometimes it just nudges repeatedly until you finally listen. And you don't need certainty to pivot. You don't need permission to change your mind, and you don't need to justify your decision to anyone who isn't living your life or carrying the consequences of your choices. Whether you're staying the course, making a small adjustment, or walking away entirely, the goal isn't to get it right. The goal is to stay in relationship with yourself as you decide. Because choosing with intention, honoring your energy, and trusting yourself enough to pivot when it's time, all of that is woman's work.
Everybody shush! William Shatner has something to say.
Cat and Jethro, Box of Oddities. The show examines weird things.
What do you do when the woman you love dies? Well, of course you dig her up and you live with her.
Aww.
That is really mysterious.
The strange, the bizarre, the unexpected.
Cat and Jethro, Box of Oddities.
Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. The Box of Oddities.